All right, 405 looks like I'll get started. So thank you all for joining logo design with Adobe Illustrator. Sure many of you know me by now. I'm Kamal, the flagship manager of the flagship clubhouse here in Roxbury of the Clubhouse Network, the Best Buy Teen Tech Center, long title. The reason why, if you can see my face while I'm looking up, is because the camera is very low. But you won't be seeing most of my face for this. I'll be sharing my screen so you can see what I'm doing in Adobe Illustrator. So today I'll be showing you all how to make a very, very, very simple logo in Adobe Illustrator. Illustrator is a Adobe program that a lot of graphic designers use to create many different types of logos, advertisements. I've messed around with it a bit. I'm not showing you all anything too advanced, but you can do a lot of cool stuff with it. You could recreate a lot of famous logos out there. I'll show you all a few logos in a minute that are actually very simple, but the more you look at them, the more you'll see the hidden meanings behind them. The simpler the logo is, the more you can get out of it and the larger audience it reaches. But it also depends on what you're making. I'm not an expert at that. Um, but based on a lot of popular logos out there, a lot of them are very simple to get the point across. And it really, depending on what type of colors you use or what type of font you use, it really brings across a certain idea, a point that you're trying to get out there. So I'm happy to show you all that, my process of how I create a logo. Um, Adobe Illustrator can be, there's a lot of different tools you can use in there, and it can be very overwhelming at some points. But the good thing about Illustrator now versus back then, um, back then, maybe in like the early 90s, you couldn't find, like if you scrolled over different, I'll show you all what I mean, but if you scroll over different options in Illustrator, you kind of had to figure them out. You had to figure out what they do. You had to play around with them, figure out what did what. Now you can scroll over something in Illustrator and it will tell you exactly what it does and it'll give you a tutorial on it. So it's very easy to use, it's a lot simpler than you think. And I'll be showing you all how I go about creating a very simple logo, um, a way to take an image that you find online and draw over it with the pen tool and create your own creation, and then put that into the logo. And I'll be doing more of these. So this is only the very first to keep it very basic, and it might be very quick, but eventually I'll be putting out more Adobe Illustrator logo sessions on how to create a very advanced and detailed logo. So again, thank you all for joining us. I'm going to share my screen in just a moment. All right. So I hope you all can see my screen. So first, I'm going to go to, these are just some logos I found online, if you all can see these. So I'm not going to go over every single one of them, but I'll go over a couple of them that might seem kind of obvious, but you might not really notice it the first moment you look at them. But a lot of these logos here are very simple. So if you look at I think this is the NBC logo with the multiple colors in a circle or a half circle. You can clearly see, if you look close enough, this is a peacock. You see the center of it with the beak right there and the peacock's head, and then you see the many different feathers around. You can interpret it many different ways. I don't know the official reason why NBC did this, but I'm sure it represents unity in a sense. And with the Pepsi logo right here, it's kind of cut off at the bottom with the Pepsi signal. Pepsi logo, Pepsi word, but this is sort of representative of a globe with the primary colors red and blue. It's also the colors of the American flag, which is very simple. So Pepsi is kind of global in a sense. One thing I read about Google is that, they have the primary colors in the Google logo with the L being green to sort of say they don't necessarily follow the rules, which is kind of interesting. Blue, red, and yellow are primary colors of the color wheel, but green is secondary. And then right here, you all might notice is the Beats logo, which is basically a circle and a B in the middle of the logo. So that's your immediate perception on it. But if you really, I guess if you really look at it, what they tried to do is show that this is a person with a pair of headphones on their head, which I think is pretty cool. It's so simple, it gets the point across. You know, I didn't even notice that those were a pair of headphones until I actually looked it up. So this is something a lot of logos can do. You know, very simple, but having a sort of um, a direct concept to what they're trying to sell or market. Similar with the Amazon logo, they want to make their customers happy, which is why you have the arrow, which kind of looks like a smile, and it goes from A to Z. So little things like that are very important in logos. But I'll be showing you all how I create logos. You know, the further along we do these sessions and workshops, the more advanced we'll get. And we probably will create something around this, but I'm doing something that's very basic for the first time to get you all familiar with Illustrator and show you all it's a lot easier than you think. So I'm going to open Illustrator now. And here are two basic logos I did that are very similar to the tutorials that are in Illustrator currently. So if you see Illustrator right now, you see you have your palette, where you can put any of your designs and text on. There's several windows open over here. You don't need all of these open. It really depends on what you want. So I'm going to close some of these that I don't need open. And then over here is your toolbar. So this is a toolbar of many different tools that you would use during your time in Illustrator. So you have the main tools I'll be using today are the direct selection tool. The selection tool. And the V in parentheses represents a shortcut. So if you press the V button on the keyboard, you'll automatically go to that if you're on a different tool. I'll also be using the pen tool, the type tool, and the ellipse tool. If you click and hold on any of these tools that have a small arrow at the bottom right-hand corner, you'll get other options you could use. So instead of an ellipse, I can make a rectangle, a rounded rectangle, a polygon, etc. But I'll be using these four mainly, and then I'll be using some other options as we go along with this to create one of these two. As you can see, these are very simple. I don't want to do anything too advanced. And you could also see I took the shape of this light bulb and traced it and put it into the image. So it's going to keep it very basic so you all can get the hang of it, and hopefully you all have fun learning this. So I'm going to start by selecting the ellipse tool. And I'm going to, when I normally draw a circle, it just draws a circle like that. And it's whatever color I've selected in this. If I go over to properties over here where my arrow is, and then scroll down to appearance and fill, whatever the fill color is, that's what the color is going to be in the middle of the circle. So that's why it's currently yellow. And you can see the circle isn't very even, or it isn't a perfect circle, because I just drew it out with the actual tool. Now I can go back and delete these. I can either click on it and press the delete button with the selection tool, or I could press Control Z and go back a step or 2 steps. So now when I reselect the ellipse tool, I want it to be sort of an even circle. So I'm going to hold down the Shift button on the keyboard and then click and drag. And that's, now I have more of an even circle. I don't want yellow. So with the first logo here, I chose purple just because that's my favorite color. And the name Starlight, it's just something I randomly thought of. It's not an official company, but I wanted to kind of get the combination of a star or something that's shining in a light. So that's why I have a circle. And then you see the sort of like star in the background with the light bulb. So I'm going to leave this yellow for now. And now I'm going to go back to the selection tool. And at the top of the screen, you should see this toolbar where it says File, Edit, Object Type. I'm going to go to, actually first, sorry about that. I'm going to go to Stroke over here and Properties. So the stroke is the thickness of the line that's around the circle. So I'm gonna increase that until about 20 points. It really is dependent on you. This is just what I want, and I'm gonna keep it black for now. And then I'm gonna go to effect, and with effect, you can have a bunch of different effects on your object or whatever you design. You can see there's some 3D effects here. You can revolve it, rotate it. You can distort and transform it. You could roughen it, twist it, stylize. You can add a drop shadow. So there's a bunch of cool different effects you could do. But for today, I'm just going to go to I'm going to go to distort and transform. Again, that's under the effects window, and you have to have the circle highlighted. So make sure you go to the selection tool, click on the circle, go to effect, and then distort and transform. And then I'm going to go down to zigzag. So now you can see when I clicked on that, it sort of created like a zigzag pattern around the circle. That's not exactly what I want. I want the edges to be a little bit more pointy. So I'm going to increase that a bit until I get to 48. And you could also just type in 48 instead of just dragging the bar to increase or decrease the size. I'm going to leave the rest of the settings where they are. If I smooth it out, it's going to have round edges. So I want the corner to be sharp. And if I deselect preview, I won't be able to see what I'm doing, but preview, I'll be able to see any changes that I make. And I'm going to click OK. Now I have my star. I'm going to move that out of the way a little bit. And now I'm going to go to the text tool. So I'm pressing T on the keyboard, and I'm going to click and drag a rectangle. And now you can see it creates a text box with text already there to show you what the text will look like if you type it in. So I'm going to delete that by pressing the delete button and then just type in the word starlight. And then I'm going to go back to my direct select tool. I'm going to change the font. I'm going to change both the font of this, and actually I'll leave the font. I'm going to change the size. So I'm going to increase that to about, leave it at 46. And I'm going to drag it in the middle with the selection tool, click and drag, just leave it right in the middle. And then I'm going to add another circle. So I'm going back to the ellipse tool, holding the shift key, and then creating a circle. So now I have my second circle that I'm gonna put in the middle of here. Mind you, this is a combination of 3 different circles inside this logo. So there's this round circle on the outside, the one in the middle, and then, the one in the underneath that, and then the one in the middle. And I'm gonna change the color of this because it's black right now, so I can't see anything in the middle. I'll change the stroke, which is the outline of it, to black. And I'll make the fill clear. So I'm going to change the stroke again to increase the outline of it. Bring that to 20. And add another circle in the middle. Drag that over. Get it as center as I can. Now we clearly can't see most of the T, the A, and the H here. So that needs to be changed because you don't want that to happen in a logo where you can't see parts of it. So this is where playing around with colors is important and knowing what colors do what in certain situations, but that takes some testing. If I change it yellow, I really can't see anything. If I change it blue, I can see anything, but you still see the circle overlaps the text. So one thing you could do here is bring the circle here in the middle to the back of the picture. You don't want to bring it too far back because then it will completely disappear. But one thing you could do is go to Object up here and then go to Arrange and then Send Backwards or Send it back. So now that if it's all the way in the back, the circle is gone. So that's what I didn't want. Oops. So I'm going to click on the text actually and make sure that's in the very front. So I'm going to click on the text, go to Object, Arrange, and bring the front. So now I can see all of the text, but the light blue isn't a great color because it's a bad contrast with the yellow there. So I'm going to change that. If it's yellow, I can't see it. If it's white, it's too bright. If it's red, I can clearly see it, but that takes more. And this is the challenge with colors, but it's also something you'll learn the more you do it, and you'll be able to see better the more you play around with colors. This red takes away from everything else in the image there. So you want to make sure your colors are kind of balanced. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the circle in the back. Sorry, circle in the middle. We'll move that out of the way first. And I'm going to change the color of that. I'm also going to get rid of the stroke. I'm also going to do the same thing. I'm going to keep the color for this larger circle, but change that to white, the stroke to white. So I'm going to click over here where it says appearance, go to stroke, and then change that to white. So this might be a little too bright, but it represents sort of a bright light. I may not go with this for the final image, but I just want you to see how easy this is to do with changing the stroke, the colors, getting different sizes. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this image over here and I'm going to use the pen tool just right here. And you could select that with the P button on your keyboard. And with a pen tool, you can basically trace out anything you want. If you were to bring an image into Illustrator, you could use a pen tool to trace over it and create your own vectorized design. So I'm going to start at the bottom here. And with the pen tool, basically going to click one of the smallest points of the image at the bottom. I usually just like to start from the bottom up. And then I'm just going to trace around the image by, when I move the mouse after I've clicked it, it creates a line. So wherever this line ends up, it will create a line that the pen tool designed. And you see this little, I don't know if you all can see this little light purplish pink line that's following the pen tool that makes sure whatever line you do is even at a certain point. So if I click here, now I have this triangle and it fills in the negative space there, by the way. So this is the advantage of the pen tool. But I'm going to go back and I'm going to go around the edge of the image. I don't want those edges in there, so I'm just going to go straight up, curve, up. And now here's where the pen tool gets interesting. If you hold it, if you click and hold, and then drag the mouse, you can sort of change the shape of the line to make it more curved. So I'm going to keep doing that around the image until I get it to be not perfect, but good enough to be a light bulb. Now we have our light bulb. And you could also change the shape of it after the fact by clicking on certain points with the direct selection tool and moving that around. I'm not going to do that for now, just to show you all what I'm trying to do. So now I have my shape. I'm going to move that out of the way. There's my basic light bulb. I'm going to make it much smaller than it is. And I'm going to add that over the, oops. So I'm going to add that over the eye. And I'm going to continue to shrink it down. And now I'm going to make this light bulb yellow and see how that looks. So now I can barely see the light bulb, but it kind of adds a cool effect where the white circle is. But that's really up to you how you want it. I think I'm going to change it back to black. One other thing I did in the other images, I increased the stroke on the starlight. So if I wanted that to be changed, I go back to stroke. I could make this yellow maybe. Now you see this, maybe the words are getting slightly smaller the bigger the stroke is. But again, it's really dependent on what you want to do. I think the words are barely visible right here, so I don't like that. So maybe I'll make the stroke 1 point. And then if I wanted to select the whole thing and move it, I would just select the selection tool with the V button on the keyboard, and then click and drag over the whole image. And now I can move it wherever I want. In the zoom in, I'm pressing Control and plus on the keyboard together. There you have it. And that's the logo I created with the previous two logos. Again, you could do a lot more advanced stuff than this. One other cool thing you could do, I'll show you real quick. If you go to effects at the top window here, the top toolbar here, excuse me, and then go to stylize, you can add a drop shadow. So the mode is the sort of the effect of transparency that affects the text or whatever image is there. If I were to go to multiply, it's kind of see-through the drop shadow. If I were to go to exclusion, it creates sort of like a glow. You can kind of see how it turned from purple to green there. Overlay, it kind of overlays the color that's already there. So they all have different effects. I'm going to change this to maybe black. And then you could change how see-through it is with the opacity. You could lower that and make it barely visible. And then you could add a blur to it as well. You could change the positioning of it, making it higher or lower, or moving it from left to right. Let's click OK. And now you see the starlight sticks out a little bit versus everything else in the image. And again, these are just very simple ways to create logos in Illustrator. There are a lot of other really cool things you could do. One thing I didn't go over is using layers. So with layers, you can create layers to be able to manage whatever different object or text you're working with. So the good thing about layers with this, since I'm doing everything on layer one, everything I've done in this image is visible in this layer. So if I click this little eye icon over here to toggle the visibility, it would make everything in the layer disappear. Um, right now, since everything is in one layer, if I were to mix something together, like let's say if I move the starlight up here, move this down here, and I wanted to move the image or something, or I wanted to delete something, it might delete everything accidentally by itself. Like that happens sometimes in Illustrator and Photoshop. So it's better to have everything on a different layer. And what I mean by that is the first circle I created, this would be on one layer, this would be on another layer, this would be on a third, and so on. And if this makes it easier that way, if you're working with layers to be able to choose whatever you want at whatever time and not worrying about affecting something else in the first layer. So layers are a really good option to use, and a lot of professionals, you'll see they have over 20 layers or more for a design they may be working on or an illustration they may be working on. And they'll switch between those layers to be able to manage whatever they're working on a lot easier. So nothing gets mixed up and everything is just organized. You can even name your layers. You could add folders to organize your layers as well. So layers are a very helpful tool. Another tool here is the Magic Wand tool. I don't have a big use for it here, but with the Magic Wand tool, you can select certain parts of maybe a photo or an image and maybe select a certain area where it's the lightest or darkest, create a certain selection with the Magic Wand tool and edit that instead of editing the whole picture. You have an arc tool, which you can create a round arc. The eraser tool, which I didn't go over, if you wanted to erase a part of the image, you could also do that with the eraser tool. There's a lot of other tools you can explore here, but I mainly use those four, which what I went over, but it really depends on what you're trying to do to create a certain logo or design, anything like that. And if you wanted to know where to find these windows, if you go up to the top, go to window, you can see all the different windows that are available here. So right now the layers option is currently selected with a check mark. So I can see the layers right here. Properties is also visible right here. If I wanted to learn how to do certain things, I could click on the Learn tool and that would show up. If I wanted to select certain brushes or colors or a certain artboard, symbols to put in my design, I could use that. There are a lot of different options in Illustrator, and it's best to just play around with it, experiment, try new things, rather than trying to, do something that someone else has done in their own way. It's a big platform for creative expression. The more you play around with it, the better you'll get. Um, and it's really fun. You could do a lot with it. You could do a lot of professional logos, and you could do a lot better stuff than I did here as well. This is good, but I think the more you play around with it, the more clean you'll get stuff. The more 3D you might get certain things. Illustrator has a lot of cool functions. So I would encourage you all to play around with it if you ever get a chance. We do have it on all of our computers here at the clubhouse, and there'll be chances in the near future to come in and test us out, design your own logos. The other cool thing is creating a logo in Illustrator and then putting it onto a t-shirt as a vectorized image. As many of you know, we have a vinyl cutter here. And one of the cool things is you could put your logos from Illustrator into our vinyl cutting program, cut them out, and then heat press them onto a t-shirt. So I'll also be showing you all how to do that later on. And again, this is just one of many series on how to use Illustrator. And I hope you all will join us on the next one. But that's it for this session. Thank you all for joining us. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. Hopefully you all are staying creative. I'd love to see you try out some cool things in Illustrator and share it with us on the Flagship Clubhouse Instagram page. We'd love to share your work and show all the cool things you do. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions, anything you're unclear about. I'm happy to help you all out, but thank you all again. Hope you enjoyed this and join us next time for our next Illustrator session, which will be in September. And we'll share that on our social pages to keep you all updated on that. Next week, we have a few things coming up where we have a film analysis session coming up, which is with our technology manager, Jason, and I, which will be going over some of our favorite scenes and some really good films and what they mean. And then on Friday that's on Wednesday at 4 p.m. That will be also on Zoom, and we have shared the link for that. On Friday, we'll be doing a racial equity session and how race impacts youth in our clubhouse, and that will be joined by Lynn, our associate director. And then on Saturday, we'll be doing a listening party going over samples and popular music with our marketing manager, Jake. So hope you all can join us for those. Stay tuned, we'll be announcing more events. Thank you all, and I hope you have a great day. Take care. Until next time.